Hello and welcome to The Life You're Made For. I'm your host, Dr. Heather Pinney. Often our world feels reactive, confusing, and chaotic. On this show, we're going to slow down together. Take a breath, listen, and learn. We'll be joined in conversations with influential thinkers who will help us make new connections, understand our unique potential, check the beliefs we hold, and learn how to overcome unexpected challenges. I know that each and every one of us holds our own inner clarity, confidence, and courage, what I call 3C living and leading. So let's go after it together. I'm cheering you on. To dive deeper into the tools we discussed today, join the Grace Space Collective by subscribing to my emails. Go ahead and head on over to heatherpinney.com right now to get a free preview of my book, Grace Space, delivered to your inbox. Now let's get started. Hello, friends. So good to be here with you. I'd love to talk with you a little bit about Grace Space. This is my most recent book, and it's the first in my series of a 3C living and leading. And I love that I started with this book because it's all about emotional intelligence. It's about how to grow our EQ. And oftentimes there's a lot of conversations around the importance of emotional intelligence, but there's very little strategies or practices for how to do it. And this is really the essence behind Grace Space. It's 7 ways to really practice growing your emotional intelligence on a daily basis. And it's something that I practice daily. And it's not that I hold all 7 all the time, but oftentimes I will just focus on one, oftentimes for a year. Right now, I'm focusing on freedom versus control and a little bit on responding versus reacting. I'm noticing myself starting to pivot over to that. So what I'd love to do is share the first 2 grace practices with you. And I think it'll give you a feeling for what it is that this is about, but how you get to cultivate this on a daily basis for yourself. And just a reminder, this is never about perfection. This is about going after this idea of leveling up, being our best self, stepping out there, presenting who we are to the world in the way that we want to present, not being a victim of our emotions or other people's emotions for that matter, staying in the driver's seat of your own car, of your own life, and making sure that you are going where you want to go and you are heading in the right direction. So let's start out with responding versus reacting. And that's the first grace-based practice. But it's this idea that we pause before the stimulus and we have a response if we want. So when something's coming at us, do we pause and decide if we're going to react and just come back at the situation? Or are we going to slow down long enough to decide how we want to respond to the situation? So when we look at responding versus reacting, let me talk a little bit about reacting. And again, a reminder, this is not about being perfect and always responding versus reacting. I think sometimes our life calls us to react, but for the most part, we want to spend the majority of our emotional energy in responding to life because it keeps us more in control. And a reaction is really survival oriented. It's on some level, it's a defense mechanism, and it might turn out okay, but often it's a reaction. And it's something you often regret later. Those things that you're like, oh, I said this out loud. I should have filtered that one. And it keeps us up at night. That's usually a sign that we probably reacted. We don't feel good about a reaction. Versus a response, it comes more slowly. And it's based on information from both the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. So you're pausing just long enough between when the stimulus has hit you and how you want to respond to it. And when I use the word stimulus, I want to go back to Viktor Frankl's quote. And it's this idea between stimulus and response that there's a space. And it's in that space that it's our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. So let me say that again. It's this idea when we respond, we are taking advantage of this little tiny space of the world coming at us, and we have a split second. If you know you have a choice to respond versus react, this is usually what helps us respond better in life. knowing that you have that choice versus being a victim of being surprised and and almost like just reacting to someone else's level of emotional either attack or confrontation or conflict or whatever it is that might be coming at you, recognizing that you always have the power to respond and versus reacting back. And there's always a little tiny space. And it's when we take advantage of pausing long enough to check in with that space, that's where we start growing, and that's where we also start getting more freedom. Okay, so let me give you an example of this. My husband and we went to the bank, and he noticed that there was lots of overdraft charges on our account. And it was some strange thing that was happening. I think it was over, 6 or 7 overdraft account charges, which didn't make any sense because we hadn't done that kind of action. And so he went to the manager and just said, "Hey, I noticed there's a bunch of overdraft charges. Can you tell me what's going on there?" And looks like there's like 6 or 7 of them, and we'd like them to be reversed. Simple request. We want to understand it. We want to reverse as the client here. And we didn't even have a split second before he turned to us and said, "Well, would you rather there be 40 charges?" We were both so shocked by the lack of customer service in that. And I looked at my husband. He looked straight back at the manager. And this is one of the things that was so impressive to me. He just paused. He was silent. And when someone kind of comes at you that rudely or disrespectfully, there's a lot of things we can do. We can rudely respond back. And frankly, do we have the right to? Yeah, we do. But recognizing we don't want to be at that level, it was really powerful to watch the dynamics happen. So I kind of waited it out, decided I was going to let him handle it. And probably like 3 seconds went by. Now, 3 seconds is kind of a long time when someone said something rude. So think about it. 1001, 1002, 1003. And seriously, there was like 2 other bank supervisors there. There was customers there. I mean, everybody was standing there and everybody was quiet. And all of a sudden, the manager, I think, felt that remorse of, oh my gosh, did I just say that out loud to a customer? Maybe he's having a bad day. Maybe he was dealing with, this was something that he didn't want to deal with. Maybe he didn't like it. Who knows? But basically, he took it out on my husband. And to hear him say, "You know what, I'll take a look at that and I'll look into that." And then my husband just simply say, "Thank you. I appreciate that." On our drive home, we hadn't even gotten home, and we realized the bank charges had been reversed and it was a mistake of the bank. And it completely, you could tell that he was starting to feel that remorse of how he handled that situation. What I want to say here is Grace Space is not about being passive. It's not about being run over. It's about holding your space wherever you're at. And in this instance, it didn't even require words. Another appropriate response could have been, "I'd like you to take a look at that, and I'm not sure what's going on here." I mean, you could still use your words, but watching how my husband handled it with no words and just kind of let him feel the weight of what he just said was very powerful. And so I want to just put that out there as an option, because sometimes we all kind of have a snappy, snarky reaction to something. And if we snappy and snarky back, what we're doing is we are creating an escalating situation, and we're participating in it. We don't need to. That's really the gift of learning how to respond. How do you not escalate the situation, and how do you still get to hold on to your power? So as we look at really holding on to your power and what that looks like, there's 3 things that I really want to put out there for you. If we want to grow in responding, the first thing is really is taking the time and pausing. Pausing helps you stay in control of yourself and keep your power in the situation. The second thing is noticing. Identify what is happening and understand what you want to offer. In this situation, understanding that the bank manager was handling this rudely and recognizing you don't want to engage rudely. You're just going to wait this out for a second and just keep looking at them. And then the third one is choosing. pausing, noticing, and then choosing. Choosing to engage productively when we are tempted to retaliate. So watching my husband take a beat, wait for several seconds, and just let the manager feel the weightiness of his rudeness, so to speak. You saw him start to own it, backpedal, and kind of apologize for it. And then before we knew it, like I said, before we even got home, the charges were reversed. So looking at these three things, this really will help you if you want to be a better responder and you feel like you're becoming a victim to everyone else's reaction. Just pause, stay in control of the situation, notice what is happening, and take that beat to really understand what you want to offer. And sometimes silence is just as powerful. And then choosing how you're going to engage with it productively. Let's say he didn't respond and it became a staring contest. I think then as a customer, you could have a variety of choices. You could handle it with humor. You could be very direct and say, well, I need to take a look at this and please get back to me on this because I have questions about this. You can be curious and say, I'm not sure what you meant by that comment, but I really need you to address this situation. There's a variety of ways you can choose to respond versus react. A reaction would look like, well, thanks a lot. You're a lot of help, or how dare you speak to me that way? Or I'm not going to bank here anymore. You know what I mean? All these are like quick reactions. And recognizing that you don't want to go around and just reacting to this world will help you recognize, oh, I get to respond. I get to choose how I want to step into this life and how I want to address and engage with the world. So pausing, noticing, and then choosing. So if you want to just pause this podcast, here's what you can do and think for yourself, or just a quick reflection time of think of a moment where you or someone you observed either chose to respond rather than react. This will help you start seeing the world through new eyes and recognizing who is holding their power of responding and who is really giving in to reacting everywhere. As a society, we want to start leveling up in this area of responding. Aren't we seeing reactions everywhere? This isn't helping us grow our emotional intelligence across the board. What does grow our emotional intelligence is if we slow down and really think about, hey, I'm going to pause, I'm going to notice, and I'm going to choose. Then we're living in a very powerful space of responding to this world. Okay, you might have paused this podcast and thought about something. I hope it was helpful to you. You might just still be going, but let me just wrap up with this idea that the big distinction between reacting and responding is, and I get to ask this a lot, how do I know when I'm responding or reacting, or how do I know? Well, let me break it down for you a little bit more. Reacting is a survival-oriented space, and you know it by how it, first of all, spreads negative stress and nervous energy. And although it may feel good in the moment, it is usually something you regret later. Example of that might be a guy honking who cuts you off in traffic and you have a split second to respond or react. You might, and honestly, I see this a lot. People bring traffic examples to my conversations when they're working through how to respond and versus react, because we're on the road and we're kind of anonymous, but we don't like it. We might get treated a way that we take personally. And the reality is we don't need to take it personally. We can really respond to the situation versus react to the situation, and they look very different. Reacting is also can be driven by fear. It could be like this threat that you feel like you're under attack, or it could be these old stories that you've been playing in your head. These are all reaction things. And it can sound like this: here we go again, or you always do blank, blank, blank. You never do blank, blank, blank. It's fast, it's emotional, it's protective, and it's focused on this idea of, I have to survive this life. I don't get to trust that the people are for me. I don't get to trust that I have a different way to respond to this. I actually have to just kind of keep my guard up. And that's really what reacting feels like. Responding is a very different feeling. It's very peace driven. Responding comes from a calm place where we remain fully in control and we're level headed. And we're offering goodwill. We feel the emotion, but we don't give into it. There's a level of staying curious of what's happening here, staying curious with their own emotion. Wow, that was really rude. I don't like how that felt. I'm not going to be rude back. See how you're pausing, noticing, and then choosing. It's slower, it's intentional, it's grounded, it's connected to your values. I want to be a person of peace, of harmony, of trust, building trust. I want to be a person of goodwill, of loving humanity well. Responding aligns with our personal values. And it involves choice and it involves emotional self-regulation. That is a huge practice. And frankly, I believe all of us could be working on that. And all my fingers are pointing back. I'll start with me. But learning how to regulate your emotions when we have a world that's coming at us fast and hard, whether it's through the news, through socials, through virtual components, or whether it's your local barista or friends or relationship or family, learning how to slow down and really regulate and self-regulate your emotions is really powerful. And it sounds more of like this. Hey, help me understand what just happened here. Help me understand what you meant by you'd rather have $40 worth of charges. Help me understand what's going on here. I'm not sure what's happening. Here's what I'm noticing. Let them know what you're noticing. Here's what I'm curious about. Here's what I don't think we're on the same page about. Here's where I'm coming from. Where are you coming from? See how these are all collaborative, connecting statements that help us stay curious in the moment? That's what fuels responding. And reacting is, there's no curiosity. It's just pure defense mode, pure survival mode. Responding says, I don't have to defend myself. I can find out what's going on here. I can de-escalate this. I can make sure I'm not a victim of my own emotions, nor be a victim of their emotions. I'm going to handle this situation with grace, with clarity, with confidence, and with courage. So this idea of responding versus reacting is a real powerful space to carry with you. Okay, I want to move on to the second one. This is accusing versus questioning. And think of a time when you felt accused. It doesn't feel good, does it? It pushes us back. It makes us feel misunderstood. It sometimes can be very frustrating, sometimes humiliating, embarrassing. There's things here that sometimes when we get accused, that it pulls up and dredges up a lot of hard emotions. What we want to do is recognize that accusation does this. First of all, we don't want to be accusers. But second of all, recognize when you're getting accused and not giving in to all the emotions that are hard around being accused. And so learning that you have the opportunity to question, learning that you have this opportunity to slow it down and ask clear questions about what's going on here. Wait a minute, I'm feeling accused about something and I don't think it's accurate. I mean, I've said those statements. I've even stopped a conversation and said, I would love to talk this through with you, but right now I'm really feeling accused by you. Can we share each other's perspective and really hear each other? And it reminds me of a conversation I had. It was a conflict conversation and it was with a colleague and there was a misunderstanding there. And before it was being checked, I just kept getting accused of something that wasn't accurate because she had created this whole reality in her mind. And for her, it felt true, but she never checked it with me. And that's when I did stop the conversation and said, listen, I would love to understand your perspective. I would love to understand what's going on right now. I'm at a loss. And more importantly, I'm really feeling accused. If we could stop doing any kind of accusation, we can really understand what's going on here. And I remember the whole conversation just changed. And she's like, you're right. You're right. Here's what I was feeling. And she began to tell me these hard emotions she was feeling. And I had so much empathy and compassion. I said, I'm so sorry you felt that way. There's no way did I Was that my intention to make you feel those hard emotions? And I care that you felt that way. And then there was the whole conversation shifted where she's questioning, well, how come you did what you did? And I said, here's what I needed to do for me and for what was right in my situation. She hadn't even gotten my side of the story. And so once she heard my perspective, it had nothing to do with any malintent or maliciousness toward her, but it was a hard decision that I had to make for me. It was powerful ending. And I will say too that not all conversations end that way. There's another time I was getting accused and he refused to believe me. Absolutely refused. And I just had to say, well, this conversation's over then. If I'm not going to be believed on my intent and you want to continuously accuse me of what you think I meant, then there's no trust here. There's no relationship here. There's just a powering up and a power struggle, and I don't do those. There's a need to control me because your emotions are uncomfortable. I don't do those conversations. So we step into, listen, if we want to be dealing with a conflict where we get to question versus accuse each other, I'm in it. And I'm in it all day long, whatever we need. The moment it turns to accusation, first of all, I won't engage with that. And second of all, I don't return accusation for accusation. That's where it gets a downward spiral quick. That finger pointing, well, you did this. Well, you did this. Well, you did this. Well, you meant to do this. I mean, it goes back and forth and nothing gets handled. And don't get me wrong, I've gotten stuck in those too. And I think that's when you start realizing the futility of that and realizing this isn't the person I want to be, nor is it the type of person I want to engage with. So I've learned to go straight to the core of it. And the moment I feel the accusation, which is usually coming with a lot of indignation and even this anger, these are things I notice, but I don't respond out of that disrespect or out of that misunderstanding. I respond, or at least I try to. In my better moments, I try to respond and say, hey, I want to understand what's going on here, but right now I'm feeling accused. Can we stop the accusations and really listen to each other's perspective? I've learned to go straight to it directly. The cool thing I've learned about humans is we're all pretty good at heart. We want collaboration. We want a connection. We want a bridge. It's really the minority that don't want that and they just want to stand on their hill and accuse you of stuff. That's really more of the minority than you realize. But it's learning how to go straight to the core of that issue. And that's really the essence of Grace Space. And keep in mind, too, that tone is everything. We may question something like, can you help me understand what's going on for you? Versus, yeah, can you help me understand what's going on for you? Do you hear the tone? One is one of curiosity, and one is actually, it's accusation kind of guised or disguised as a question. But in the question, you kind of hear the tone of like, what's wrong with you? Or you kind of blew it here. And so remembering that questioning from Grace Space is really powerful, but tone is everything. And when we choose to question versus accuse, what we're doing is we're opening our understanding. We're seeking clarity, not victory. We're building connection. We're growing. We're learning. And it does sound something like, hey, can you help me understand what's going on? What's your perspective on this? What were you hoping would happen? Can I share my perspective? What am I missing here? I remember saying that to my young son. We were having a conflict and I said, listen, clearly I'm missing something. I've never raised a son before. Tell me, what am I missing here as your mother? It was a powerful conversation. And even as we've moved into adult children, sometimes I'll ask that question. I think I'm missing something. Like you can feel that in your gut when something is going adrift in a conversation, but you don't know what's going on. I've just learned to start questioning and saying, hey, before we start digressing here, which we can do quickly with our family, right? And our close friends, sometimes they take the brunt of our least favorable behavior. And to learn how to just really say, wait a minute, I think I'm missing something. Can you help me understand what I'm missing? Is really powerful. It does require a trust relationship. And if one person's only asking, what am I missing? Then it's not an equal relationship. So you're always looking for, is there equal footing. We are neither above people, but we are neither below people. So grace space is about holding that space on equal footing and equal ground, and you're inviting people to join you on an equal level. You don't want to power up, but you don't want to be subservient. No one's less than and no one is greater than. We're all equals as humans. So learning how to create that space and carry it with you is powerful. So as we wrap up, I just want to focus on those first two with you just to help you think through it. You can pause the podcast here and reflect for yourself. When was a time you felt accused? When was a time that you witnessed maybe or experienced yourself of feeling accused and you turned it around to slow it down and question? This is one of the hardest ones to do, especially what's being modeled in our world right now. There's a lot of finger pointing and blame and shaming. But you may want to pause and just reflect on one yourself. Okay, so I want to wrap up these two with just some big takeaways here. Accusation really protects your ego. Reacting really protects your pride, your arrogance. It's that idea of questioning and responding that it's curiosity that protects the relationship. When we choose curiosity, it's a real powerful tool to love our neighbors better, to love ourselves better. Sometimes we have to be curious with ourselves. And I just want to remind you of the three things with whether we're responding or questioning, and we're trying not to accuse and react in the situation, to pause and then notice and then choose. Pause, breathe, slow down the moment, notice, what am I feeling? What story am I telling myself? And then choosing, do I want to be right or relational? Do I want to build bridges or break them down? What would curiosity look like here? Learning to choose and address these questions help us step into that space better and better. All right. As usual, I'm cheering you on in this, and I want to remind you this takes practice. It's not perfection. Once you recognize that we're all in this classroom here on Earth, we're in this planet Earth school, so to speak. It's learning to choose the curriculum you want to study. For me, I want to study grace space. I want to study what it's about. I want to carry it with me. I want to invite people into it. I want it to be something that we grow and cultivate together. And I guess that's why I want to bring you into this invitation of, it's called this, what I've called a grace space invitation. I'd love to read it out loud to you, because the more I'm working with people, the more people are responding to this kind of this call to say, yeah, I want a grace-based culture in my company. I want a grace-based culture in my family. I would like us to have this huge awareness that grows, and we can pass it on and be able to start recognizing that we have so much more choice than we think in our emotional intelligence. And we have the inner goodness. We all hold it. Grace space calls out the inner goodness. And that kind of the antithesis of grace is shame space. Shame space calls out the darkness in all of us. And we hold both, lightness and darkness, goodness and evil. We hold it all. One where we can grow, and one we can really shrink and diminish. So grace space is really about, hey, I want to focus on growing the right space in me and around me. So those that are choosing to cultivate this idea of grace space, we're calling it the Grace Space Collective. And it's people I'm working with. It's people that I'm engaged with. It's people that I notice doing it and they're modeling it. Again, this is very intuitive. I'm just putting some handles on it so that we can continue to grow it together. And I just focus on 7. There's probably millions out there, but these are 7 that I have found for myself that helps me level up as a leader, as a parent, as a coach, as a friend. It's helping me be the person I want to be and how I want to show up in this world. And again, I'm going to keep saying this because I work with so many high achievers. It's not about perfection. There's so many times I react or I accuse or I I do it in a way that I don't like. It's really, though, about noticing it quicker. It happened to me last week, and I said, hey, I could have handled that better. I just moved right into reaction. Do you see how it's this holding yourself accountable? And I said, here's how I want to respond next time. And so it was this teachable moment I was giving myself versus either becoming unaware of maybe you're growing as a reactive person or you're developing a pattern of reacting. This just allows me to pause in the moment and recognize the human that I want to be in and really owning how I want to cultivate that. So this is an invitation for you. We who are in this Grace Space Collective, I call us the seekers and the advocates. We are wisdom seekers. We stay curious. We ask honest questions. We listen for what's true within ourselves and in others. We believe clarity is cultivated, not rushed. We resist easy answers in favor of deeper truth. We are growth advocates. We don't stop at insight. We choose embodiment. We practice courage in real life, real relationships, and real decisions. We stand for growth even when it's uncomfortable, and especially when it matters. We know confidence requires fostering around beliefs we hold, and we engage courage when we are ready. We do not rush ourselves or others. We create grace space and a space to respond instead of react, to question instead of accuse, to stay receptive rather than defensive, and to foster constructive versus destructive communication, to choose connection over protection, to cultivate freedom instead of control, and to lead with trust rather than fear. We believe we are not behind, not broken, not late. We are becoming. And we choose to grow with clarity, confidence, and courage together. This is what I'm calling the Grace Space Invitation. You get to decide who you want to be. You get to join the spaces out there, and you get to create the spaces out there. This is the space that I want to create. And this is the invitation I have to everybody who is involved and connected with me and the work that I'm doing, and or just the friendship that you might have with me, all of it. I want to be a person of grace, and I want to create a space of grace around me. So I'm learning how to articulate that and make it very clear. And I'm also saying what I'm willing to participate in and with and who and what I'm not. Every opportunity I take, whether it's a client, a speaking opportunity, a workshop, whatever I'm doing, I am either checking the grace space they have and I'm bringing the grace space with me. That's how intentional I want to be about this. And that's why I've really designed this idea of the grace space invitation. And I'd love for you not just to join me, but I'd love for you to join yourself in how you want to show up. That's what I care about. You get to hold your own grace space within you. And that is a very peaceful way to live versus an angry or frustrated or depressed or anxious way to live. Grace space really creates an inner sense of harmony and peace because our emotional intelligence starts rising and we start beginning to really connect with a higher level sense of self. And we all feel better when we respond better. That's the essence of us being human. So here's how you get to respond. So this is a great place for me to pivot and to talk a little bit about what's next. So this idea of grace space, I just want to encourage people to cultivate that within yourselves, to recognize the power you hold, to be a person of grace and to carry spaces of grace within you and recognize that people do want to join that. People want to be a part of that. So I want that for you. And I also want to acknowledge that I believe it lives inside of all of us. And as I have engaged with grace space myself and I'm focusing on the practices I want to practice on, my relationships have incredibly increased for the positive. My clients, my conversation, everything has gone up because I'm being much more conscious about how I want to show up in a conversation, especially when it gets difficult or it gets confusing. And that's why I'm taking some time to cultivate this a little bit more. I'd like to do more speaking. I'd like to do more writing. And you've heard me talk time and again about being self-aware when things are shifting. And then sitting with this observation to make sure that this is where I want to go and it's the new context. You know, what am I experiencing? What is the sense I'm getting out of this? This very thing is what I've gone through over the past few weeks I've recognized that I want the more space to step into this, to recognize I'm at a crossroad. And as I've talked about it in The Life You're Made For, there's this sense that when we come to a crossroad, we can be a melter, which is speeding through it, or excuse me, melting down, or we can be a speedy, which is speeding through it, or we can be a pauser, which is slowing down long enough to ask the questions. So I'm grateful for the confidants, such as my wonderful husband, Darren Pinney, and other people on my team, close friends, beautiful clients that I've worked with, that they've allowed me to even kind of walked alongside and process some of these different pathways. And I'm realizing that in order to press on forward with the intention, I'm going to have to focus on a few more important selective initiatives. I want to concentrate on my leadership coaching with organizations, with leadership teams, with speaking and writing. And I am working on my fifth book that's coming out in my Grace Space 3C Living and Leading series. And I do have the need to slow down and do some writing around that. And it's also just a space where I have adult children that I want to pay attention to. So all that to say, in order for me to really engage in what I want, I'm going to be taking a pause with my podcast. And it's been a difficult decision for myself and my team, but it's allowing me to pivot over to some areas that I want to say yes to. And even though this podcast has been so much fun and I've loved the guests, it's time for me to pause on it for a little bit. It's been in 5 seasons. Can you believe that? Yeah. And I've got so many other exciting things to continue to share with you. But for now, I want to pause on the podcast and I want to let you know that I'm pausing. And I wish I could tell you it'll be for 2 years, 5 years, 3 years, 2 months. Who knows? I don't know yet. But I want to say, even though the podcast is on pause, the mission and the community remain. And here's what this doesn't mean. I'm not giving up the leadership journey we share. The conversation is certainly not over. And that's why I'm channeling all of my insights and energy into really this idea of the Grace Space Collective. So here's one request. Would you sign up for the Grace Space Collective newsletter? It comes out every week. And you can go to heatherpinney.com and fill in the subscription form there to sign up for my weekly Grace Space Collective newsletter. And in this space, I'll be sharing insights, thoughts, and information to all of you under the banner of Grace Space Collective. This is all of us, this invitation to join this circle of wisdom seekers, growth advocates, and practitioners. And boy, there's a lot of amazing people out there. I so many times want you to get to know each other. I can't wait for some of those opportunities and seeing what might come down the road. I want to start engaging with my community a little bit more. I want to hear from you, whether it's responding to my newsletters, whether it's shooting me a text or an email. I want to hear more of what's going on with the people that I am serving. And I want to learn from you. And this is how we stay connected and keep the journey going together. So over the coming days, let's stay in touch. Through email, newsletters will drop into your inbox weekly, and anytime you can reply and send me a note. I get some really great notes, and I promise I'm reading them all. People want to tell me either maybe a tire swing that they're on, or a Grace Space collective idea, or an invitation to, maybe an idea around doing a conference. I mean, these are all things that are kind of coming across my path, and I really want to take the time and just hear from all of you. So I will be reading everything that you all share with me. And I want to just thank you all for being wonderful listeners of the Life You're Made For podcast. And can you believe it? We have done 5 seasons together. My heart is so full of gratitude for being able to share the stage with all my esteemed guests as well. I've learned so much. I bring on people that I just love talking to and have an excuse to talk to them and doing a podcast. So thank you to all of you who have joined my podcast and joined the conversation. You have really grown this idea of Grace Space and participated in it with me. So I'm going to see you over there in the Grace Space Collective, and go to heatherpinney.com and sign up. As usual, I'm still cheering you on over here. Take care, everyone. Did today's episode resonate with you? Rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And don't forget to subscribe to receiving emails at heatherpenny.com so you never miss a moment of growth. Cheering you on.